discovers or finds a book hidden within the frame of a painting that he bought at an old antique shop called the Book of Lost Treasures. And it proves to be a mystical book which can find anything down through history which has ever been lost.
Oh, that's really cool.
That's cool.
So that's the Treasure Hunt Club?
The Treasure Hunt Club.
Okay, and what about the Janice Witch?
The Janice Witch is about a young witch who's part of a murderous and violent coven. And her coven is attacked by a group of witch hunters. They escape through a hastily constructed portal of magic, which ends up hurling them from their medieval world into present-day East Texas.
Ooh.
And the passage leaves her critically injured to the point where she loses all memory of her previous life. And as she recovers, one of the doctors that are helping her with the recovery is a young pediatrician who is the exact opposite personality-wise of the way she used to be. He's kind and he's compassionate. And in fact, she falls in love with him. And they appear to have a happy life together until she starts to suffer flashbacks to her previous life, along with manifestations of her magic. That's so severe, she fears she may end up actually killing him accidentally.
Gotcha.
Interesting. And if I remember right, you won an award or two for the Janice Witch. Is that correct?
Yes, I got of course, I've got a Reader's Choice 5-star award, which I've had several books I've posted for review on Reader's Favorite, and got a 5-star review. Also, I think I got they kind of run together with me. I'm trying to remember if it's a feathered pen reward for, or actually it's I won a badge. We all know what those are if you're a writer, for Science Fiction Fantasy Award for the Janice Witch from the East Texas Writers Guild.
Awesome. Very awesome.
Yeah.
Very good. So,
wait. There's one more. But wait, there's more.
But wait, there's more?
Yep. There's Edison Jones.
Oh.
Edison Jones is I taught science for 21 years. Okay, give that as a preview. And when I was a kid growing up, I used to love to read a book series called Tom Swift. Probably, I don't know that a lot of people remembers that, but if you know the Hardy Boys, it's sort of a big book series like the Hardy Boys, only instead of two brothers that sleuth out mysteries, it was about a young scientist and the inventions and stuff. So I decided we needed a 21st century version of Tom Swift, who I called Edison Jones. And I added to him being paraplegic, paralyzed from the waist down. And I also added that he was sheltered much of his life until his grandfather decided that he had had no contact with kids his own age. And so he forced him to start attending a public school at age 12 in 7th grade. And so the story is kind of 2 tracks. 1 track is about all the inventions that he comes up with, and 2 about how he adjusts from a 12-year-old boy and interacts socially and learns how to interact socially with other 12-year-old girls and boys, which turns out to be the hardest thing he's ever done in his life.
That's awesome, because we can all think back to those middle school years, and they were like the worst. And you know, you take a whole situation of having to maneuver the world from a wheelchair, and you've kind of been sheltered. That, you know, that's something I think all kids could sort of tap into, that feeling of awkwardness. And even us grown-ups that can remember what 7th grade was like.
Well, before we jump into anything else, we promised people that we would have games and giveaways. And so we're going to do our first giveaway. So those watching, you have a chance to win either the Open Portal, which is book 1 of Conquest of the Veil, or you have a chance to win book 2, which is Escape from Wheel. So the question I have for you is, if you're paying attention, you should know this. What was the name of Mona Parker's guardian angel?
Dun, 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 dun.
So you have a few minutes. Put your answers into the comments. I'll keep watching. You guys can keep talking.
Okay.
Mike, where did you get? Yeah, Mike, where did you get your ideas for Conquest of the Veil?
Well, of course, as far as the character goes, as I stated earlier, as a public educator for many years, I'd experienced what bullying was like with kids, and I wanted to also have a character because we see these kids, we see people like them every day, and adults as well, that are kind of like just part of the background because they're not very loud and they're not very active and they just sort of go by, and we don't really know much about them because they don't say much. So I wanted to have a character that doesn't seem like they could accomplish much, but it's because they've never been asked to, nor have the depths of their character been explored before. So very much an anti-hero to perhaps a hero with the character Mona Parker, whose new identity is Alexandria or Alex Duvalier. The other thing was I wanted to have a world where you had a clearly defined, in fantasy, world building is, as we all know, is a big deal. And I wanted a world where you had a clearly defined line between good and evil. And in this case, it's actually a boundary, a physical boundary between good and evil. And what happens when you're trapped on the wrong side of this boundary, and then those on the other side, no matter what they do, they can't get through to help the people that used to be part of their brothers and sisters and citizens and that sort of thing. So and so that's what I came up with, which is the Conquest of the Veil. The veil, which is in the title.
Okay, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Okay. The veil. Hold on.
Thaddeus Finkel is the name of the guardian angel. Obviously, people weren't paying quite close enough attention, so I'm going to go with one a little bit easier. What was the planet that Mona got transported to? Okay, go on with the veil.
Okay, carry on. The veil is actually
a boundary of magic. It's invisible, and wind passes through it. Soulless creatures like birds and animals pass through it, but humans cannot. And so, and the person that has the key to allow passage in and out happens to be an evil queen. Think
Maleficent from.
Her name's Marlinda, and she's called the Veil Queen, and she has created the veil to conquer that area that is separated from the larger area of Meredith.
No, she holds the key. Is that what you said?
Yes, she and she alone can allow passage into and out of the veil. So what she does is she uses that ability to send her army, which I call raiders in the book, through the veil into the other section to pillage and steal and all of that. And this has been going on for over 1,000 years.
Goodness.
Interesting. So
James put East Texas. Not quite. East Texas was the original place where Mona started, but when she got transported to the planet Meredith.
Which is
Correct.
A really cool name because we have a niece named Meredith.
That's probably how I remembered it. Okay, here's another question then. We're going to go super easy here, folks, because he literally just said it in the last 5 minutes. What is her new identity name? Mona's new identity name. I'll take the shortened version.
There you go. So, Mike, like a lot of fantasy writers, I've written fantasy as well. There's that kernel of truth that we bring from sort of our reality world that we all live in to our fantasy, like you said, world building or whatever. Exploring good and evil of course, is something that fantasy has always tended to do. You know, one of my favorites is, of course, the Narnia series. You know.
Of course, I think that's everything.
So, you know, did you have sort of influences from, you know, past books that you've read, or just sort of that, you know, there's certain things about, you know, exploring good and evil that you know, kind of came out as you began to write the Conquest?
Well, like most fantasy readers, probably, when I was growing up, I got a hold of a copy of Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien.
Yep.
And that started my, you know, love of fantasy. But another book I read later as an adult, which still to this day is one of the best books I've ever wrote, particularly about the difference between the contest between good and evil, was The Stand by Stephen King.
Oh, that book is creepy.
It's a creepy book.
Okay, you know what? I'm gonna just give one to James Hill because he is trying so hard. I asked what the short version of her name was. Her new name is Alexandra. Alex for short. He put Meredith. I was laughing at.
Yeah, James. It's a good college try.
Yeah,
he did, and he tried to answer the other one because he said, "Where's she from?" And he said, "He's Texas." I said, "Not quite." So, you know what, James? We're just gonna go ahead and give it to you because you're trying. So, okay, congratulations.
Congratulations to James Hill. He's also an author and a publisher, and James is also a fantasy writer, Mike. So you should check out some of his stuff. And he's got some good deals going on Amazon as well. So might want to go sneak onto Amazon and see what James L. Hill has got going on. So, you know, it's interesting. You know, of course, Tolkien is one of the, you know, the fantasy, you know, touchstones, I guess, you know, along with, you know, C.S. Lewis and, you know, kind of, I guess a little more recently, Robert Jordan and, you know, folks like that. And I know in, you know, the fantasy that I wrote, I definitely explored, you know, good and evil, and my bad guys were bad and my good guys are good, and, you know, and so, you know, did you find it interesting that how to write a bad character, but still make them somewhat relatable? I know I struggle with that because I was like, yeah, my bad guy's bad, but I still have to give him a little bit of relatability.
I know if I can make you like my bad guys, which I generally do, then that's a good thing.
Yeah.
Then you're identifying with them.
Yeah. So how did you sort of handle that in with the Veil Queen?
As far as relating to sort of a bad person, you know?
Yeah. Well, and still making her, you know, a character that the reader can at least understand the motivation, maybe.
Right. Well, that's a good question. In my head, I had somebody that was not the Veil Queen. When people do things in their life and bad things happen because of what they have done, whose fault is it? Okay.
Right.
And most people won't admit that's just human nature. They don't want to admit that they did something wrong. But sometimes, you know, particularly if you're bent already, you become angry and you blame everybody else for the issues that you have. And so that's very much Marlinda, the Veil Queen in the Conquest of the Veil series, because on Meredith, as I said, it's a planet of magic, but this magic is something you have to be trained in. And it's not something, even though if you have the ability, you're not allowed to practice it without training for good reasons. And if you want to know all the reasons, go read the book. You know? But she doesn't want to do that. So she has to escape into the wilderness, you know, to keep from getting arrested. And there she plots her revenge against all the people she felt has wronged her. And so she has the ability, she does have an ability to use magic and that sort of thing. And she uses that to exact her revenge. If you've ever seen The Shining with Jack Nicholson, or you've read the Shining by Stephen King, Jack Nicholson didn't start off as a bad person, but he ended up being a murderous character in the movie.
Right.
And so this person was never going, Merlinda was never going to be a great person, but she evolved into a murderous psychopath,
Right.
basically. So.
Interesting. Well, what are, I think your background as an educator, and if I remember right, you taught sort of high school age for the most part. Is that correct?
I taught in junior high. I've taught high school and junior high.
Huh?
But I've mostly taught, at the junior high level.
Okay.
And
you are a brave man.
But I've taught high school. I've taught high school as well.
Yeah.
And
so how did that help you when you're relating to some of these teen characters in your book?
And well, I think I told CJ that as an educator, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but it is a very target-rich environment.
Oh,
you get to see all kinds of people.
I mean, if you're a people watcher, that is like every author's dream, is just to sit and be a ghost on the wall in the middle of a high school.
And you can, I've seen some things that I never thought I'd see, and I have seen some things that I never thought I'd see. I never thought I'd see more than once, and when you have I have a very good imagination, and when you have a good imagination and you actually have you have examples of all sorts of people, it's not hard to come up with characters. It'd be like, imagine how many characters you could come up with if you went to a mall like North Park Mall in Dallas and just sat there on a bench for a week and watched and studied everybody that walked by.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
imagine how many characters you could get.
Oh, yeah. I love people watching malls. You can actually go to the courthouse. You get some really interesting ones there. You can go to a police department and just sit.
Right.
You can, like I said, sitting in a high school or a junior high could be interesting. Church is actually an interesting place to find.
Church is also.
Yeah.
I once saw in a mall, Longview Mall actually, had to be is either a teenager or a very young college student who walked in, and they were dressed from toe to head like Frankenstein. It wasn't Halloween. It wasn't even close to Halloween. Had on the boots and the everything up to the just like, and walking around like they were trick-or-treating or something. Like I said, it wasn't even around Halloween, but you get to see all kinds of people, and like I said, I don't, lest anybody thinks that any of the characters I come up with are somehow a reflection of them. I don't do that.
No. I'm just saying that, I think it gives you an understanding of people, and especially young people.
Right.
That, your average author who maybe, hasn't, because you write a lot of sort of young adult oriented stuff. I mean, you know that experience because you've observed it for so long.
Edison Jones is a good example of it, because I was middle school principal for 9 years. I taught middle school for many years. I know the characters. I mean, I know the kids, and how, 1/2 foot coming in 6th grade, still being elementary, 1/2 foot in 8th grader going into high school, being a teenager. So it's an interesting age, but yeah, I know them pretty good. So Edison Jones was not hard for me, nor his friends. that are also part of the book.
Are you planning sequels for Edison Jones?
My plan at this point, once I'm finished with the Conquest of the Veil series, is to kind of do like a Harry Potter type deal where, you know, each year he advances to the next grade, like in
Oh, I love it.
Hogwarts. And so the next book they'll be in 8th grade, and then the next book they'll be in 9th grade, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Love it, love it. So kids can kind of grow up with the characters,
Right.
kind of like people grew up with Harry Potter, you know.
Right.
So,
Okay.
yeah, that's awesome.
Quiz time.
What?
Quiz time. Quiz time. Time to read a book.
Oh, quiz time. I'm like, what are you? What?
Quiz time. Literally just said this. My question is this. He was a principal to what grade level? Middle school or high school? I'll make it a 50-50 shot. He literally just said it. So keep talking.
Keep talking. Anyway, so with the Conquest of the Veil series, and this is book 2. So how many more are coming?
My plan is to have 4.
Okay.
The Conquest of the Veil actually was my very first writing project 12 years ago. Actually more like 14 now. I had no clue what I was doing. And it ended up being a 1 million word count document, which I thought would make
Oh dear.
a good book. And a good book. And I started attending writers' conferences and joined some writers' organizations. And I soon learned that what I had was at least 10 books. And anyway, so it'll be 4. And basically you can get rid of about 600,000 of those words.
But you know, again, it's one of those things you got to start somewhere. You know, my first book, I thought I was writing a short story for my niece and my nephew when they were, you know, kids, and the story just kept coming out of me, and I'm like, where is this coming from? And I'm like, oh, I think I'm writing a book. I've never done that before. So.
And then Out Game, which book was that one?
The Nightmare King. The Nightmare King. So, yeah, so it's like, I promise it's been edited and rewritten about 20 times before it got published. So I'm like, fine.
Athena Paris, hold on. Athena Paris is the one that got it. She's in middle school, and James put in his, I knew that one.
Yay, Athena.
Good job, Athena.
And Athena has a book launch this evening at 7. So everybody pay attention to our Facebook, because we'll be sharing it all over. And she writes romance, and I have not read her book that she's launching tonight, but I've had some friends read it already, and the way they're describing it, I think it's a romance that I would actually like to read. And I'm not a huge, you know, that's not the genre that I automatically pick up. I'm more of a sci-fi fantasy, you know, are there space aliens in it, you know, kind of reader. But
I read a little bit of everything, except for I try to keep them clean, whatever it is I'm reading.
Yeah.
I don't like the ones that are a little over the top in some of the stuff that they do. But I read a little bit of everything. I read horror. I'll read, you know, cozy mystery. I'll read a little bit of romance. I'll read sci-fi. You know.
So, Mike, speaking of different genres, have you ever, you know, experimented with another genre like cozy mystery or something like that?
Well, actually, Edison Jones was a departure from the normal fantasy, because
Right.
it was more scientific action and adventure. But what I do try to do with fantasy is to include elements of very like mystery, thrillers, suspense, romance, all of those things, and include them in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And so I read, like CJ, I read a wide range of genres. but and so to answer your question, yeah, I think I mean, I've got other projects in mind. Most of them have to do, you know, like I said, I've got a really good imagination. Most of them have to do with the strange and unusual, like with, you know, like with fantasy. When I say strange and unusual, just you'd have to have a good imagination, you know. And so, if so, I stretch it out a little bit. I will say this on the fantasy that I write, and since she writes some as well, Lyd, you know, fantasy. So much about fantasy is world building, right?
Right.
Okay. So if you've never read fantasy before, you love cozy mysteries, or you like historical romances or things like that, 99 times out of 100, that person will not choose a fantasy book to read because they can't relate to, they're not used to the genre, and they have difficulty relating to the stories and the characters. So fantasy sometimes can be overwhelming, particularly with world building, because you can have a book, you know, this thick, and half of it's about the world building, okay? And so what I try to do from the jump is introduce characters like Escape from Wheel, and like with the Open Portal, you have Mona Parker character, bullied teenage high school girl thinking of committing suicide. Well, everybody knows that. I mean, everybody can relate to that, right?
Right.
That's a character that's easily understood. Instead of leaping straight into, well, the Black Dwarf from the Northern Kingdoms was bringing his, you know, his 100 ice elves down to storm the Blood Castle, where you know, if you've never read fantasy, you're going, what, you know,
Right.
you know.
But it's like you can relate to this person from the quote unquote real world that then continues into the journey of a fantasy world. So yeah, it's a very interesting.
You could have read any genre, and I think in all my books, the characters that are introduced, you can identify with and know and follow the story without getting lost or losing interest, because it's fantasy instead of, you know, romance is romance, right? Action is action, adventure is adventure, regardless of genre.
Right.
So we've talked about different genres. What was your favorite book growing up? Like mine was Encyclopedia Brown. I love Encyclopedia Brown.
Well, actually, I think I answered. When I was about 11 or 12 years old, about 11, my mother bought a box of books at a garage sale. And inside were a bunch of Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew and other books. And I started reading those, and it turned out to be like a, you know, chest of gold coins. And my mother used that as, Mike, you can read the next book when you finish chores A, B, and C. And so, so I started reading then. And so Hardy Boys, I guess, was the initial books that I started reading that got me started, you know, loving to read and that sort of thing. As a teenager, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything by Tolkien, you know, The Hobbit, that sort of thing. And in college, like I said, I just, you know, by that time I was reading all different genres.
Lydia, what about you?
Well, when I was 12, if it didn't have a horse in it, I wouldn't read it. Which is a funny story I love to tell when I'm talking to school kids, because I read on about the, you know, 8th or 9th grade level in the 5th grade, but I almost didn't pass reading 6 weeks because I wouldn't read the books that were on the list because there were witches in them. So, you know, and that went over really, really well with our mom, who at the time was a 6th grade teacher. She's retired now. So yeah, Lydia learned to read on the list, even if they didn't have horses in them. So I graduated up from horses to dragons and sci-fi and all that stuff. I was a big, when I was 12, like the Black Stallion series and Marguerite Henry, which is, you know, Misty of Chincoteague and all that stuff, man, that was right up my alley. And then I sort of graduated up into sci-fi and sci-fi or fantasy. Loved the Dragon Riders of Pern and and all that
And
stuff.
McCafferty.
Yeah, and McCaffrey, and of course, Narnia, C.S. Lewis. Just, I mean, he's my hero. At all sorts of levels,
Yeah, like I said, mine were Encyclopedia Brown, and also those choose your own adventure stories, because I liked having a little bit of control over where the story went. I thought that was pretty unique, but
because I'm a little bit, just a smidge older than my sister. They hadn't really come up with the choose your adventure books when I was that age. That was it. That came along after me.
Oh, I love that Boxcar Children. Like I said, choose your own adventures. The oh gosh, there were so many. The Narnia books, the Little House on the Prairie books. Like I said, I kind of bounce all over in a myriad of different ones that I happen to enjoy.
I loved Robert Heinlein, science fiction back in those, so it's kind of fell off with that when I started reading fantasy, but I actually, the memories are coming back now. It's the science fiction part, Robert Heinlein, Gordon Dickinson, they were all, I loved those stories.
Yeah. I thought an author that I used to read a lot, that crossed the fantasy and sci-fi boundary back and forth very well was Andre Norton.
Yes.
Remember her? Oh
yes,
my God, she was awesome.
She was one of my, that is so funny because she was my second favorite after Robert Heinlein. And then she went from straight science fiction into fantasy.
Yeah.
And yeah, I loved
her stuff.
That's funny. I still have a bunch of her books boxed up.
I do too. And if anybody's, a geeky fan like us, Amazon has like an ebook box set that you can buy of hers that's got like 50 books in it, and it's super cheap. So I've already bought it and it's on my Kindle. So if you want to explore one of the masters of sci-fi and fantasy, go check out Andre Norton.
Yeah.
Okay, we're gonna go for our third and final question. Woo! Because we just happened to come across it, and it's kind of a 2-in-1 question with the same answer. Earlier, there was a specific sort of series that launched Mike into his fantasy. It also was his favorite one in his teen years that we just talked about. What was that series?
Dun, 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 dun.
And that one's pretty easy if you're listening.
Yep. So Mike, this is the question I always get. Well, when's the next one coming out?
Oh, well, funny you should ask. I'm about almost halfway through the third book, which I have yet to pick a title for, in the Conquest of the Veil series.
Awesome.
So it'll probably be around March of next year.
Yeah. Because if you're not an author or you haven't known one and watched their process, we would all love to be able to just take all these ideas and just go, and have them be perfect on the page. But there's that rough draft and rewrite and send it to the editor and let them rip it apart, and the rewrite and then make sure we get the right covers on it and all that kind of stuff. So there is definitely a process to this.
This book just came out. But Edison Jones just came out in March, so you're actually doing pretty good in your timelines.
Got 2 books, yes. Edison Jones, March or April, somewhere around then, and then Escape from Wheel. But I normally up to this point, I've only produced about a book a year. So either I'm getting better or COVID's helped me.
COVID's giving you a whole lot of time.
It's like we're all staying home.
Right.
So my problem is I have too many people at home to talk to me. I'm like, stop calling my name.
Like the phone that's currently ringing?
Like the phone that's ringing right now. There it goes. I shoved it down in the laundry basket. I did. I was like, oh no, I didn't get rid of this phone. Anyway. So Mike, we've got about 15 minutes. new writers, you know, they're always looking for, you know, some words of wisdom. And I don't know about y'all, but, you know, heck yeah, I've published some books and everything, and yeah, I've learned some stuff, but I'm still learning. But what piece of advice would you give to that struggling author out there that knows they've got a story that the world needs to see?
Well, remember, I started off with 1 million words and thought that was one book. So the best thing to do, and you can't go wrong, is join our author organization. There are 3 in East Texas. You have Northeast Texas Writers Organization, which is based in Mount Pleasant. You have East Texas Writers Association, which is based in Longview. And you have the East Texas Writers Guild, which is based in Tyler. And also you have a statewide authors organization called Indy Beacon, used to be called Texas Authors.
It's
as well.
Authors Marketing Guild right now.
Authors Marketing used to be called Texas Authors. So and then you have big ones like Dallas Writers Organization, you know.
Houston Writers. Houston Writers as well.
I think every city of any size probably has a writers organization. It's probably just a function of Googling.
Yeah.
You know, we do have 3 in East Texas.
Some of them are even knocked down, like there's the Dallas Mystery Writers. Some are knocked down to specific genres.
Right. But they're excellent because most of the people there have, when I joined Netwo, Jory Sherman was one of the founding members. And Jory was a famous Western writer. You know, he'd written, you know, hundreds of Westerns. He was very famous, well-known. In fact, he wrote a lot of books on writing. And so you get people who know a lot about writing, and you can, instead of having to go out and learn it on your own, you just, you know, you pick your brain. And every writer's meeting, you know, you have a different aspect of writing discussed. And also generally, they put on writers conferences. I know Netwo does a writers conference every year. East Texas Writers Guild does, I think. East Texas Writers Association in Longview is fixing to start up doing that as well. But you learn a lot by going to these conferences. I will tell you that some of the best and most timely help that has really helped me, especially since I started writing full time, is to have a critique group, people that you trust. A good critique group I have found, this is just me now, I don't know about others, but it has people in it that represent a variety of genres. They're not all romance, they're not all fantasy, they're not all historical fiction, that kind of thing. And they tell you, because y'all know, you can read your work 1,000 times and miss things no matter how many times. And then somebody who's never seen it before, the first time they say, well, you missed a comma there, or you've already mentioned this twice, you know, and so it's made me such a better writer. And it's a reason why I've been able to produce these books. And for the most part, you know, you may like them, you may not like them, but they're not full of a bunch of grammatical errors, run-on sentences, or repeat information that you've already been told, and so on. You know, the kind of mistakes a new writer would make, you know. So join a writers organization, find a critique group, go to writers conferences.
Well, and I know you guys can echo this. The writers community, the author community, it tends to be one of the most generous with their time in helping each other out, because we all remember, you know, in dramatic detail what it was like when we were the newbie, when we didn't have any clue other than I've got this story burning inside of me and it has to come out, and you know, I don't know how to do this. You know, people in the author community are awesome in, you know, being available to help walk you through the journey. They're not going to write your book for you, but like you said, you find a good critique group You get recommendations on editors, like, who edited your book, blah, blah, blah. Who did your cover design, and you can learn from other people's mistakes.
So Lyd, what's your one piece of advice? That was Mike's. What's yours?
Me? Hire a good editor. Because I'm with Mike. You can read your own work a million times and your brain just fills in what you think is supposed to be there. So I had one of my editors dub me the queen of the leading adverbial phrase. I'm gonna get a t-shirt made that way because I want the action to go. I mean, my middle grade book is like, let's go, we're on an adventure, we're going. So suddenly something happened
out of nowhere.
So yes, I did need editors to rein that in for me. So what about you, CJ?
Well, I totally agree with both of you. My one piece of advice would be actually it's a dual. Write from the heart and write what you know. With fantasy or some stuff, you might not be able to write exactly what you know, but there's a lot of stuff you can research, a lot of stuff you can make up, especially when it comes to fantasy. But write from the heart, because different things like right now, Draculas and werewolves are going to come and then they're going to go. When you write from the heart, it's never going to go away. And when you write from the heart, you'll be able to, your readers will read from the heart and you'll be able to hit that core. So that's what I've always gone by, is I write with my heart. And there are usually two types of writers, a planner and a pantser. I am wholeheartedly and will own the fact that I am a pantser, which is why writing that very first book I told you that I'm republishing here in September has been painful for me, because I actually have to stick to it. So painful. A pantser can actually, I sit down, type, and write. And that's why I said when I write from the heart. And that's, the story just ends up flowing. Whereas people like Lydia is not. She told me,
I'm a planner pantser. I don't write like super detailed outlines, but I do have, like sort of chapter bullet points and things like that. What about you, Mike? Are you more of a planner type or
pantser?
I'm like CJ.
You're like CJ, okay.
Remember, I had 1 million words. Okay, on that
That's true. That's true.
Honestly, I think the biggest one I ever wrote was a little bit over 100,000. I cannot imagine writing 1 million words.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible.
Yeah, it was experience. But yeah, I like to. I did the first book that I wrote, the Treasure Hunt Club. I wrote the ending first, and I said, you know what? I'm going to write backwards from that.
Huh.
But another advice to beginning writers: don't do that.
How did that work?
Yeah, I was going to say, does that actually work? It'll work, but you get a million. You get 1 million words.
Words from it. You get 1 million words from it.
Yeah.
Well, it's hard, and if you're a pantser, like CJ and I are, and you get an idea on a story, it's too late. You went backwards. Okay. You can't like go forward and say, hey, well, I'm going to change this, because you've already done all that work. So just don't do that.
Don't do that.
Well, and another tip I would say is especially if you want to write sort of more mainline fiction, action fiction, whatever. Get you a good book on screenwriting, because they talk about plot points and things in that. And when I was in grad school, I took screenwriting and I wrote a couple of screenplays. And I didn't apply all of those rules, but it definitely helps you see the story structure. Mm-hmm. And, since I've read, CJ's work, she's my sister, it's like she hits those plot points because without
not even trying.
Yeah, without trying, because it's like, it's such a natural thing, it's like we've all watched the movies, and so we kind of instinctively go for that. But I know for me, just a screenwriting book, I think there's some you can find, with stunning titles like screenplay,
J.B. Hart, H-A-R-T. He's one of the ones that wrote, is it Pan? The one where Robin Williams had grown up and he went back to Neverland.
Uh-huh.
He actually wrote that one. He has one that's called the Heart, H-A-R-T chart. And his method actually charts it out so you get almost like a heartbeat.
Oh, cool. All right.
So
you know, there's, and that's the other thing. There are tons of resources out there. You know, Google it, YouTube it. You know, there, you can learn anything on YouTube.
Well, too,
you might not want to know, but okay.
You don't want to know, but you know.
Which COVID has showed us, and we're zooming now, is that you can be part of a writers group or a critique group and be 500 miles away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, so you know, if they've got a Zoom, everybody's zooming now. Maybe that's, like I said, if any good comes out of this, you know, you can do these meetings over the internet, and you can be part of a writers organization, whether you live nearby or not.
Mm-hmm. Well, we've only got a few minutes left, so I'm going to wrap us all up. Nobody actually answered the third one. The answer was what, Mike?
What
was the question?
The question was what? It was twofold. What launched you into fantasy? And the same question or the same answer is, what was your favorite book as a teen?
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings.
That was the answer. Now, for those interested in Mike, you can find his website is michaelscottclifton.com. And also, as we mentioned earlier, all of his ebooks, let me say that one more time, all of his ebooks are only 99 cents until August 31st. So even if you're even remotely interested, quickly run over to Amazon and get them all.
It's 99 cents.
And of course, while you're there, love an author, leave a review.
Yes, please leave reviews. If you read somebody's book, you know, it makes or breaks the Amazon algorithm, and it's what we all.
I'd like to just break the Amazon algorithm.
Yeah, I'd like to break the Amazon algorithm, but we have to play by it. So it's part of being an author.
That's
So.
right.
Well, thank you all for joining Lit and I's first Facebook Live. Mike, thank you for braving it and being the guinea pig.
Yeah.
Kind of fun. But we enjoyed having you all. And thank you for those who participated. Our winners were James Hill and Athena Paris. And each one wanted book 1, one wanted book 2. I have their emails for you, Mike, later.
Okay.
You can send it to them. Mike, thank you for braving Facebook with us. You're a brave soul. You are a brave soul. So we do thank you for coming on. Mike, any last words?
You know, Escape from Wheels, great book, and so's Open Portal. And again, as you said, if you got a chance to leave a review, we love those as authors. And I do appreciate both of y'all allowing me to be part of the broadcast.
Awesome. Well, so y'all, until next time when we pop back up here, enjoy.
See ya.
Bye-bye, y'all.
Bye.